Good morning, everybody. We're going to have a serious talk. We're going to give it that minute to let people log on. Got an extensive day, and I still have some work to do on a tremendous presentation, first of its kind in Canada, focusing on the alt-right and the alt-left. That comes tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. in Alberta, Saskatchewan, 4 p.m. BC, and there's also a time change in Atlantic Canada. Look at your times, come in. As you go west, it rolls back. As you go east, it goes ahead in two jurisdictions. So tonight, you're going to see that alt-left like you've never seen it before, undisputable evidence, as well as the alt-right, undisputable evidence. That radical left, radical right are going to be analyzed. But more than that, folks, more than that, what this video about here is today is all about the ENDEMIC. As of December 24th, 2021, I've told everybody I don't narrate COVID anymore because there's no issue for COVID. Now, there is in vaccinations, and we're going to discuss that. When people take the crime of children's genocide and armed conflict, again, I'm going to tell every Canadian, every first person, that crime is the worst crime in the world today. Ruled in absolute majority. When I say that, the United Nations Security Council, permanent 5 members, they rule this world. They run it in its entirety. They have full say in absolutely all binding world laws. They're given a veto for that. They ruled COVID-19 a pandemic. They said it's a pandemic. I can't change that. Nobody can change that. For those sworn to the crown here in Canada, where Canada gives its sovereignty to the P5 member United Kingdom, when you roll out narratives against the binding power of the 5, i.e. the allies of World War II, you're not operating as an ally of World War II. There are 2 things we're going to look at just this morning here. In narratives people are trying to share and bring up. Oh, but Dave, did you look at this person out in British Columbia, largely unseated, all Vancouver, all of it massive into the coast, most of BC unseated in Canada. Again, if you don't know what that means, it means a perpetual state of war against those First Peoples in Canada. We see it in both coasts. I'm sorry, folks. That's what unseated means. It means that you're still at a state of war. Canada's at war with the Canadian Indian, specifically in those territories. Forced seating throughout most treaties. I can show you the signatures of the spirit animal representing each nation of the time who signed on to treaties. People can talk about that. In no way or shape or form can you adequately, to any world expert, any academic anywhere, announce that the First Peoples had a spirit of treaty and liked the treaties. Because what's written in the written law is not their song, which is their law. They're one and the same. Anyone narrating spirit of treaties and all this and all that, the First Peoples were duped, done in. I can show you the historical signatures of each represented spirit animal in Canada. Not in English. Nobody's signing their name in English onto written law of the colonials. Nobody. The P5 have ratified imposed binding laws in this world. Nations who don't wish to follow have a number of things applied to them, no less than sanctions, military intervention, and absolutely destruction of your political ruling system, your constitution. It's happened many times since World War II, and tonight we're going to touch on that as we analyze the alt-right here in Canada and the alt-left. Pretty much one and the same, and we're going to look at that in the deep, dark edges of what is the NDP and absolutely the PPC. People trying to share to me and tell me, oh, Dave, Oh, look at this guy's video. Oh, I looked at that radical alt-right video who goes into how vaccines are murdering people all through Africa, and they make all these claims. Unfortunately, folks, the P5 ruled in majority, no veto. They imposed upon the whole world the COVID-19 vaccinations and ruled it a pandemic in its time. In its time, these last 2 years. They ruled it a global pandemic, and they also created the value in supply chains and absolutely the production of the vaccines. All of them, every single one. They also, many years ago, cemented the crime and punishment of genocide, cemented in absolute binding law worldwide. One such crime, the worst crime, bound by the 5, imposed on every nation in the world, just like ruling a pandemic and producing vaccines, all by all 5. There's a few others, but largely all 5. They also ruled that children's genocide at the hand of armed conflict, like what the RCMP did, armed, to take children away from the First Peoples in residential school genocide, are absolutely in violation of binding laws. But we have 2 binding laws here. 1, it was ruled a global pandemic. 2, vaccines administered, produced. So when a lunatic from the alt-left or alt-right starts narrating to breach one binding law or make a narrative, and then they take another binding law, and they try to say, oh, this one's okay, but not this one. Folks, you're being duped. You're being manipulated to absolutely destroy your narrative. Because if you go forward with children's genocide, you also have to go forward with the pandemic as it was and all the vaccines as it was. You can't in one sentence say one thing against and then one thing for. That's called ultimate hypocrisy. And in math, the language of math, if you take a plus, an equal plus, and an equal minus, and you put them together, what do you have, folks? 0. 0. You see the con job here? They give a presentation as though they're for something, telling everybody, oh, now come aboard with us, we're for you. But they're not really for you, because they didn't make the distinction. They added a minus and a plus of equal weight, put them together, giving you 0. If you go forward yapping off about killer vaccines and children's genocide in the same sentence, guess what you've done? You've lost all the P5. And then where are you? Oh yeah, you're back to 1867's Constitution, where you give it to the British Crown. Don't worry, folks, 7 p.m. we're going to get into it. All First Peoples, regardless of what you believe, doesn't matter. I told you endemic. It's clearly endemic. I don't talk about it anymore, and I won't entertain all those folks crying in their soup. I won't. It was ruled a pandemic. There are vaccines and many treatments out, and there's many more coming. You may not like global special interests and billionaires and all that. I get it. But you're not going to be able to narrate one narrative completely opposed to binding law and then add in a narrative completely supporting the same organization, because that organization's going to look at you and say, I'm sorry, but you've scorned us here, you've breached our laws here, and then you're demanding that we seek justice of your laws here. It don't work like that. That's Canada's colonial design. That's the institutionalized Canadian blubbering baby and blubbering first person in complete ignorance of how law works internationally and how it's bound to each and every one of us. People talk about sovereignty. Canada has none. And people say they want that, but in the same breath, they absolutely give it away time and time again and make it so you can't absolutely get any justice, none whatsoever. First Peoples, Canadians, if you truly want to fix your country and you truly care, you have to distinguish. I wrote a paper, The Nature of International Law as It Really Is. It went in with Oxford. It went all over the world. It's not how many people follow you. It's about who follows you and who reads your work. That paper went viral in the academic community. Didn't win any awards. It didn't even make the top 10 in that paper submission against many world-credited experts. But it was read by absolutely all. It made it to the point that I was invited to write about it. And it's reached a lot of folks, a lot of powerful folks. And I'm extremely proud of that. It's one of the greatest accomplishments in my lifetime. Not bad for your average, everyday Joe, Jane Canadian. But I promise you, trying to incorporate those who violate international law into challenges in international law is a minus and a plus equaling a zero. An extremely large played game done over and over and over. Just like the post I made about Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper, and I'm going to give tidbits. Tina didn't want me to share. And she's right to a degree, but we're going to highlight that now for all those ignoramuses out there stuck in institutionalization. Trudeau says, we can't supply the oil to Europe. We don't have the infrastructure in place. Except for 4 years ago, folks. He introduced Bill C-48. What is that? What is that? That was his Privy Council, his ministers, drafting a bill which passed basically an order in council, but it passed through Parliament, through the voting system, to ban absolutely all tankers according to International Maritime Organization, another binding law of the world, about sulfur content and size of transportation to absolute transport oil products. He banned all of that in Canada. We watched all the oil companies say, we're done, we're out of here. We're out of here. If you can't play ball and you're going to violate world laws and then tell us to do all this and lease property in your country, we're not going to do it. We're gone. You're finished. Justin Trudeau did that. Tanker ban. And what does that mean? For all you who love the environment, low sulfur content by building large tanker transports at a reduced sulfur fuel content, meaning making the world a better place and delivering larger product capacity to the world. Justin Trudeau said, no, I don't want Western Canada to ever be allowed to do that, including Eastern Canada. You will never cross the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean with any credible tankers, or you'll be taxed to the ever-loving Jesus to make it so there's zero profit. You actually lose money. You actually are raping, pillaging, plundering the Canadian people. He created the law to create the situation of today. Second law he did was Bill C-69. No more pipeline interprovincial bill. I am cancelling all forms of regionalism, the federalism of Canada. I'm going to make sure you don't get any when it comes to oil and gas. None of that. The Great Lakes of Alberta will never be made available to the rest of Canada. Never. I won't allow it. I won't allow it. I will divide every province and I will be unitary king of Canada. Folks, Justin Trudeau created everything that's going on today in Canada's narrative with Russia, Ukraine, and absolutely European Union. We can't pick up the backfall. Why? Because Justin Trudeau made the bills that don't allow us to. He's not a victim here. You're the victims of Justin Trudeau, who created the system that is destabilizing the world. And why? Because Trudeau wants a unitary king's system right across the world. He wants nothing more than being ultimate king. He's not alone. The Conservatives did it too. The Arctic and Russia. Did you all know we're in UNICLOS, which isn't binding law, but we have 4 P5 powers there. Russia's had us in UNICLOS for a number of years over the Arctic. Canada transplanted Inuits from one region into a starving and depraved far Arctic regions as human flagpoles. Killed all their dog sled teams, made sure there was no way they could possibly leave. Lied to them, told them there's great food, there's game. We're trying to reinvest in the damage done from the Hudson Bay Company. Well, that was a trick. They took it to the far reaches that Britain didn't want. No Canadian can settle. No human can really survive those climates. But the First Peoples do. They find a way to survive, and they did. It was a tremendous expense. A lot of people couldn't survive that. The Inuits suffered, but not as bad as any other Canadian or anything that Canada abandoned over and over. It was their way of transplanting human flags to say, oh, look, this is Indigenous land. Except for Canada's so stupid, the government's so dumb, the Conservatives so stupid to think that Russia doesn't know all about it. Alaska used to be Russia. Russia's 1,000 years old history. They have a massive amount of history in St. Petersburg. But liberals and conservatives so tied to colonialism, they've never, ever had any experts in Russia. I have the fortunate privilege of reading all of that history, as does America. There used to be, besides the Hudson Bay Company, there used to be the Russia-America Company. Oh yes, folks, before Alaska was sold, Russia had military outposts, the same history, prehistory of Canada, with the Russia-American Company, just like the Hudson's Bay Company. There was a Russia-America Company. No colonialization, but they too met First Peoples, which are the American Indian today, absolutely the Arctic peoples of Canada. They took them to St. Petersburg. They logged everything. They learned their language. Russia, language of science. They learn languages. They don't abolish people and languages. They learn them at their own footing. I'm not saying a lot of First Peoples died over Russia. I mean, all of Europe brought disease. But Russia didn't transplant settlers to colonize. They never did that. Never did that. And they actually adopted the language of the First Peoples, because that's what they do with everybody. And that's what they've done in history. They need to learn languages. They do the science of the human condition. Folks, when people play colonial power and they lie to you and they say, hey, we're going to adopt your narrative. Oh, but we want you to adopt our fake narrative to add to it that displaces the whole narrative. All First Peoples and Canadians who go with the anti-vax strategy, the anti-world binding law strategy, ratified 2 years ago by the P5 and the whole world in mass majority, when you try to oppose that, you've undone yourself, and anything else you bring forward gets undone. You don't get to say, hey, please help us, please use this law, but by the way, fuck you on this law. It doesn't work like that. As we all know, law is law. You apply it equally. And the UN and the UNSC all are equal to their laws. You don't get to pick and choose. That's a sickness of Canada, a sickness of colonialism, and a trick UK plays on Canada forever and a day. They do it to all their colonial jewels. We don't have P5 power. We don't have the power to separately veto anything. And any lunatic or radical, because the alt-left has them, the alt-right has them, they're just all colonials trying to trick you into destroying a narrative. Are they helping with residential school genocide? No. Not when the first sentence disputes and dispels the P5 and then the second sentence tries to claim the P5. Doesn't work like that. It's like me saying, oh, the crime of rape is no big deal. Don't believe it, guys. But the crime of murder over here, we're going to go through it. As soon as you dissolve one law and say, oh, but you want to try another in the same system, the system says, sorry, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that, and there's no system that's going to accept that. You'll never find a rule of law that accepts that. Just like Constitution, like the USA, you don't get to pick and choose parts of the Constitution you wish to override another. You don't, and you see it in the Supreme Court all the time. That's a flaw of Canada and the Crown, where your king, through Governor General or any of their lieutenant governors, by utilizing Governor General over them, can override your courts. That doesn't happen in the United States of America. And when judges err, it just goes up the channel and eventually it corrects itself. Sometimes that takes longer than we like, but time and time again it's corrected. The P5 is no different. They're no different. They will correct countries who go off the rails. And this is the case of what we saw in BC, people sharing that to me. No, it's not about crown colonialism. It's about the fact they, in first sentence, again, like I knew it would be, breach the P5 and then try to utilize the P5. P5 don't accept that. They're not Hippocratic like Crown Colonial Canada, because Crown Colonial Canada is not legal in this world. It's not legal worldwide. It's only legal in domestic Canada, applied by Canada by hiding behind the P5 power of UK. It's clearly diminishing, folks. China and Russia aren't down with it. USA is going to reset itself. Have faith. They always do. You can read lots of articles about Democrats crying in their soup talking about democracy. We'll never get 66%. Of course you won't. And that is a good threshold, because you got to manipulate the masses, the majority, to change the Constitution. The Founding Fathers were smart. For example, we can look at France and Macron's winning election. He won with 28% of the vote, or literally, folks, considerably less than 1/3 of the population, meaning more than 2/3 of France doesn't support Macron, but he still won. Why? Because you have 20 parties. And everyone's got a little division. It's completely divided. The mass majority doesn't support the narrative that France is pushing forward, especially in globalization, but they're so divided. It's a staple of Crown. It's an illusion of democracy. You don't want a country running in majority. And why? Why that happens? Because it's not protected constitutionally. France didn't even go into constitutionalism until post-1952, folks. Go look at it. UK still hasn't gone through it. They said they have a living constitution. All constitutional experts, regardless of your left leans, your right leans, the rest of it, when it comes to the world of constitutional experts, you will not find one in any narrative ever to say that codification isn't pressing, that countries without any codified constitution, meaning written constitution, highest laws of the land template, a written design, signed, sealed, certified by all the people, or at least for the people. If you don't have that, you don't have a real democracy. You don't have a functionable system. You have a system that's easily usurped by whomever's in power, whether that's democratically elected or not. There are strong templates of constitutionalism, Switzerland, USA, very old systems, USA, one of the oldest in the world, done by regular folks in plain speak. They had large insight. And still today, folks, USA, regardless of all the crap from the alt-right and the alt-left that threatens and pounds on USA, that document still holds strength. Now, there's radical left agendists and radical right agendists that would love to transform it. Some of the radical left has a different narrative. Let's get rid of the 66% threshold. Let's get it to 50+1. The whole design of the 66% is show me a majority. And the only time you get real effective constitutional change in USA is when you can win the masses, meaning all the folks in clear majority get the concept and agree with you. And if you don't have that, it means there's something wrong with you. It means there's something fundamentally wrong with you. That means you shouldn't be messing with that Constitution. And if you can't get that massive majority, meaning you better win the left and the right as you've got it designed. And today, folks, America largely crippled. It's waiting for that savior. And if you think it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, clearly it's not, because those folks, those two fellas, can't even win 50% of the American public. Neither president could. They're each as popular as the other because they've entertained too much of the radical right, too much of the radical left, which is a narrative that is anti-UN Charter and anti-codified Constitution of the United States of America. I can tell you that. Radical Democrat, oh, Donald Trump. Radical alt-right, oh, Joe Biden. I mean, they are crap, but what is your crap? Just like, what is the crap we watched in BC? And I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to go there because I already know the lunatics, the radicals. I know you're a radical. You tell half-truths just exactly like the royal family. And you don't even go against the royal family. You want that power for yourself. You tell people, oh, don't worry, all the problems you have today, your narrative, I'm going to fight for that in royal fashion. You can trust me. Well, the mainstream doesn't trust you. Clearly, you're an extreme minority because you're on a lunatic fringe or you're on a radical fringe. And you know what? They're up here in these top shelf corners of autocracy, and just like the globe, it's a circle, and those radicals way up here, going up, have already met at their pole. They're already overlapping each other. That's the problem with Canada. That's the problem with constitutional monarchies. They're garbage. UK is an uncodified constitutional monarchy. They change the goalposts whenever they want, and they use the Atlantic Charter of 2012 that Canada bound by Stephen Harper, loved and appreciated by one Justin Trudeau, to keep administering all kinds of penalties that fall in less than a third. Often these guys are falling in less than a third of the popular vote. 35% Canadians, do you realize that a third to even less of the population is voting in these people as Prime Minister to have divine, autocratic, full crown customary law power over all of you? The third is commanding the two-thirds. That's the definition of pyramid scheme and crown colonialism. And they do it by the crown colonial customary laws, unwritten laws that none of you get to see published publicly. They do it in secret cabinets. An order in council. The Privy Council. Privileged. It's no joke, folks. This is real. This is today. This is everything that everyone gave their lives for in World War II. There was a World War I, and they are all crown colonial wars. Nothing to do with anybody outside that. Today at 7 p.m., you're going to see the extreme left and the extreme right, which is NDP and their communists, their minority fringe communists, and you're going to see absolutely the alt-right, the PPC, in its highlights. You're going to get to see it for the first time in Canada's history. Why are they doing what they are? And you're going to see the highlights like no one else has ever seen. A one-of-a-kind presentation. It's going to show you the truth, and there's no way for either of them to get out of it. It is real, it's credible, and it's terrifying. The mind of madness. You're going to see it. It's what the Nazis used. It's what the Japanese used. It's what the Italians used. It's what the Portuguese used. It's what the Great Britain, the United Kingdom today used. It's what France used. Germany used. We can go on and on. Denmark used. And they justify it. Hey, this is good. Just find your place in that abusive system, that radicalized system. Convince the masses. It's sick, it's depraved, and you're going to all see it 7 p.m. tonight. Thanks, that's my video. Bye now.